No theme song? Oh, oh, okay. We are live. This is the Safety and Sports Writer Show with Knoxville and Big Joe as we get ready to talk to you about the world of sports this time, but mostly football. And we're going to bring on Mr. Kelly. Good evening, everybody. It is the Safety and Sports Writer Show with Knoxville Nate and Big Joe as we get ready to talk to you about the world of football and sports at large. And I guess we're going to start it out tonight to talk about a man who looks like he had some bad gumbo.
Yeah, we had a National Signing Day today. Of course, a lot of the wind in the sails of National Signing Day is gone because everybody signs in December. So we kind of knew what was going on, but it's pretty interesting to look down at our boy with the accent who has stooped to new lows.
I say right foot creep, walking with that heater. Look around, stay low, make sure they don't see you. Catch them bad, walk down, face them with that heater. The devil under your feet, you on your way to see him. Stretch me when I can't sleep, bang on when I see you. Play with me, you can't sleep, we got into the sea-shoe. You won't have no case rearrange your shake soon as they face you.
I mean, there's just, America doesn't have talent. I mean, this guy is just, he's lost it since he went down there. I don't know. I was kidding with the bad gumbo. But somebody, is there like a voodoo lady or somebody that threw or a voodoo man who threw something on this guy? Because the fact of the matter is, he's acting weirder and weirder with every week down there.
Yeah, I mean, the shocking thing to me is he's actually gotten some recruits to go there. The funniest part is the guy in that video who he was dancing with there did not go to LSU. He signed with Alabama today. So that's pretty humorous, but it's just like, I can't believe that some of these guys are falling for it. I guess they're just going to LSU because it's LSU. They're certainly not going there because they think Brian Kelly is a legit man, because I don't know what he's doing.
I don't know. They used to say if you spend a lot of time in Catholic school, once you get out, you go wild. So maybe that's it. I don't know.
I can't explain him or what the hell he's doing, but that is the funniest.
You won't have no space. We in your section till we spray you.
I just need.
I have to keep watching.
I say right foot creep, walking with that heater. Look around, stay low, make sure they don't see you. Catch them bad, walk down.
Crash.
Here you go, Joe.
Oh yeah.
You can't even make this stuff up, man. You really can't.
He's just lost it. I mean, these are the things that, we got a lot of coaching crap to go over tonight. A lot of craziness that's going on around coaching, around the NFL. You wanted to bring up that Texas A&M. If we can hit that now with Jimbo getting a little PO'd at being questioned as whether money has anything to be involved with him getting the number one recruiting class, which of course it should and will and does.
Yeah, I believe it does. I mean, they're definitely paying players. We'll listen to a clip here because he was interviewed today, and basically the premise is, there's been lots of people coming out saying that they're paying for these guys, and they are. I mean, it's the NIL deal. The school's not paying them, but they're getting their boosters and they're getting these big money donors to buy these guys. And this is hilarious to me because Jimbo sounds offended by this. So
slap in the face or whatever when there's these thoughts out there that it's because a lot of money is being spent and just your thoughts.
Here's what I'm going to say, and this is point blank. This is point blank because here's my problem. There is no $30 million fund. There is no $5 million. There is no 10. This is garbage. Okay, and it pisses me off.
It's not coming through to me.
People,
so you have to tell me what he's saying.
It comes from a site called Bro Bible by a guy named Sliced Bread. Then everybody runs with it. So it's written on the internet as gospel. How irresponsible is that? I'm gonna tell you, there's some very reputable writers in college football and sports that wrote it and have said it and have done things. That's unbelievable to me. When I first heard it, I laughed. I said, "Oh yeah, what a clown!" I mean, I didn't even think anything of it because I don't have social media. And it kept building, and lately I've heard more about it. To me, it's insulting to the players that we recruited that's why they would come here. You ever been to a game here? You ever come to school here and see the education? You ever talk about the 12th man, the Aggie Network when you're done? There ain't a better university in this country. And it's insulting to what you say.
He's insulted. He's insulted by the accusations.
It's the worst thing is these guys have been they've been hiding it for so long that it's almost a reflex to them now. I mean, this has been going on under the table in many colleges for years, if not all of them. And now that it's out in the public, they just can't take the fact that it takes a little bit away from their egos that they get picked on for that. Well, that's just it.
Yeah, I mean, they've been paying these players for years, and we know it. And now it's legal to pay them, and they act like they're insulted by it. And I don't know. It doesn't really matter because, hell, he had a lot of talent last year, and can't win more than 8 games. So, I'll believe it when I see it. As far as him winning the West with Alabama still going strong with Bryce Young and Ole Miss, adding Jackson Dart and several other players themselves, I think he's going to have a hard time getting out of the West, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's not going to make it any easier for him as long as Saban's in the SEC and Kirby Smart. I mean, those are the 2 best coaches in the conference. So you've got to put together. Well, he's doing the right thing. He's trying to maximize his talent. That's going to be his best shot. And I don't know if he'll have enough talent to be on his coaching to get it done. So we'll see. But coaching as a whole took this should be a week when we're talking about football with the great playoffs we just had, the great season we just had, a little bit about Tom Brady retiring. There's a lot to be said for him retiring, I guess. And we got the Brian Flores legal action that starts the week off, and it become the centerpiece of this. And I have a few thoughts on this. First of all, is there racism in this world? Yeah, but I don't think this is the greatest example of racism in this world. There's 32 of these jobs, okay, and it's not like Brian Flores had never gotten an opportunity. He went to Miami. He was there for 3 years. You and I defended him. You and I said it was stupid to fire him. You and I were cheering him on for the last 2 years for the job he does. And I still say that Miami was stupid to let him go because I don't think there's many coaches that could have gotten more out of that team than he did. But to sit there and start making accusations, a crazy accusation, maybe crazy, I don't know. I wasn't in the interviews. But I don't see what the final aim of his lawsuit is. I mean, does he want to be the Lou Flood or the Kurt Flood of this generation, fighting for what he thinks is really something that's wrong? Or is it just the fact that we have terrible owners in the NFL who are making these decisions? Like I pointed out to you the other night, I don't know if Brian Daboll is going to be the answer to the Giants. This is their 4th coach in 7 years. 4 in 7 years. And the 30 years before that, they had 5. And that since Wellington Mara passed away and his son took over this team, Wellington Mara, before he died, chose Tom Coughlin to come in and straighten out the team. And he did. He got him 2 Super Bowl victories. Some years were better than the others, but that was his last hire. Since then, and the Giants hired a minority GM in Jerry Reese. So I don't think they have a racial problem. But the fact of the matter is, John Mara and Stephen Tisch are terrible at picking coaches. And we'll see what they do now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I think there is, there's definitely racism in our world. I think there's definitely probably, racism in hiring, in some people's hiring practices. But this is a guy who actually had a job. This is a guy who was actually hired and, led a team for 3 years. I think he is frustrated because he got fired, and should he have been fired? We can go dance around that question all night long. Let's be honest. I mean, if you really wanted to keep your job, you probably shouldn't have lost 7 games in a row. But at the same time, he definitely showed improvement in his time in Miami. I think one of the reasons that they let him go was, he had some conflicts with the owner, obviously. He had some conflicts with the GM. And then the team seemed to take a step backwards this year. They won 10 games last year. This year they went 9-8, didn't have as good of a season, lost 7 games in a row, as I mentioned. And then I think he was frustrated that he didn't get the job that he wanted in New York. Now, I don't know if you've seen the Belichick.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, the Belichick text messages. And I'm like, how is that racist? I mean, he's an idiot and sent the wrong text to the wrong person, but I don't know how that's racist.
We've all done that. That is the sin of Twitter, is the fact of the matter. You sometimes send the message before you read it properly, or you send it to the wrong person. I mean, the whole thing is becoming crazy now. Now the accusation of tanking, okay? And all these press outlets and these guys sitting there going, oh, this is about the integrity of the game. How many times in the last 5 years did we hear things like, we're just around the New York Jets, we got to suck for Sam. We can't lose enough games so we can draft Sam Darnold. Oh, now we got to tank for Trevor. We got to lose more games. The guys were crying when Jacksonville got a chance, when they won a game. They had the nerve to win a game late in the season that kept them from drafting Trevor Lawrence. I mean, tanking. I'm so sick of these stupid broadcasters that I listen to all day long, sitting there. Oh, how can you do this? How can you do this? Every year around the trading deadline, there's the guys that are selling, the guys that are buying. The guys that are selling off all their big chips. And what do they make them? A second-rate team that are going to suck the rest of the year. And we always talk about them doing this. We talk about teams, oh, why did they win that game? That just hurts their draft place. I mean, if you're going to sit there and tell me that these owners were wrong for it, well, you're wrong for condoning it in your broadcasts throughout the year. Why aren't you bringing it up and saying teams should stick with these players and try and win as many games as possible? No, you're always talking about getting a better draft position, and getting rid of high-priced talent so you can get better players next year if you're not winning. I mean, it's so hypocritical of these guys that are now going to sit there. And I'm not a Stephen Ross fan. I think he's stupid. I think he's taken what, in my lifetime, early in my lifetime, was a great franchise and made him a joke. And you know how I feel about the Giants and what John Mara has been doing for the last 15 years after they, or I won't say the last 15 years, last 9 years, last decade. But I get so mad at the media and our brethren and doing things like this, all of a sudden being all high and mighty saying, oh, we didn't know this was going on. Oh, we didn't know about tanking. Everybody knows they tank when they figure out they can't win anymore. And they condone it and they ask for it.
Well, they do it in the NBA all the time.
Yeah.
The Sixers did it for like 10 years.
Yeah.
And lost on purpose to try and, garner additional draft picks. But let's be honest. I mean, look at the NFL and look at week 18, where, the Lions beat the Green Bay Packers. I mean, the Lions, it would have behooved them to lose that game. Let's talk about the Jaguars. They should have definitely lost that week 18 game versus the Colts. The Colts were trying to win because they were trying to get into the playoffs, and the Jaguars kicked their ass. So I'm not saying that it doesn't go on, because it does, but it also doesn't, because some teams, are out there to try and win, and they really don't care about that stuff. But, to act like this is so, such a new concept, and that they're so shocked by it. And then Hugh Jackson coming out and saying, oh, the Browns paid me to lose games. And I'm like, Hugh, if someone paid you to lose games, you would be the richest man on the planet.
You did it pretty well.
This is a guy that went 1-15 with the Cleveland Browns in 2016, and then he went 0-16 in 2017, and then he started off 2-5 the following year before he was finally fired. And if ever there was going to be racism in coaching, you think they would have fired him after that first 1-15 year, but they let him keep coaching. And if they were paying him to lose, he's a rich man.
And remember, immediately after he got fired, the Browns started improving.
Yeah.
And he almost made the playoffs.
Correct.
So, everybody, it's like anything with these lawsuits, everybody piles on and everybody's going to throw. I'm sure there are text messages out there between owners, between GMs going, well, once they got to 0-12, well, maybe we should lose the rest and get the number one draft choice. Who knows? I don't know. It's just now it's becoming a ridiculous. I don't want to say, the hardest part is there is an inequity. There should be maybe more black coaches, but it's not like they're not given chances. Sometimes they just don't. The guy in Houston who just got fired, he was given a bad hand. But, where's all the jumping up and down of why Deshaun Watson has been sitting on the bench all year long, collecting money, and Roger Goodell doing nothing about that? That's a bigger tragedy than these coaching jobs, because most of these guys get fired after 1 or 2 years anyways.
Yeah, David Poley getting fired, I did think was kind of a joke. You hired this guy, you act like he's your guy, you give him absolutely nothing in regards to talent or direction as far as from the front office. He manages somehow to win 4 games with, in my opinion, tied for the worst roster in the NFL. The Texans and the Jaguars both had jokes for rosters, and he wins 4 games and then they fire him. If he came out and said that he was fired because of racism or was being discriminated against, I would probably listen to him a little bit more, because he might have a leg to stand on there. But we'll see what happens. As far as this lawsuit goes, I'm interested to see what happens with it. He says he's doing this because he wants to see change, and if that is the primary motive for him, then good for him. I hope it works out for him. But the problem is, this isn't going to endear him to these owners. They're the ones that choose who gets to be the coaches, and by suing them, they're definitely not going to hire you now.
No. And another thing is, it's in the court of public opinion, it's going to be straight down the middle. People are going to see this. It's a bad. I hate to say it. It's a bad time in this year, in this country, to be bringing up this as polarized as we are. You're not going to get the groundswell of support. You're not going to get the even-minded people you're going to need to, maybe, if he does have evidence, prove his case. I don't know. I don't know how it's going to work.
The NFL couldn't be more popular than it is right now. And I think that's where he's going to run into problems, is even if there are people that side with him, and even if he has proof, and even if, his lawsuit is 100% meritorious, there's going to be people that don't want to see him succeed because they want to watch football on Sundays.
Right.
And that's where that's where I'm kind of conflicted into the basis for doing this. And then the timing of it to me is somewhat confusing, as he's still in the mix, or was still in the mix for several of these jobs. He's interviewed for many of them, and has had interviews with several of the other teams. So I think if he may have just waited 2 weeks, he probably would have been hired again. So I'm not sure why he's the one that's ringing this bell, and why he's doing it, at the time he's doing it.
And another thing to bring up, and I know that the NFL is not like regular business. It's different business. But let's face facts. We've all been up for jobs, okay? And you go in an interview, and it goes well, and maybe the guy interviewing you says, "Look, I really like you, but there's more people I got to talk to. Please don't take another job until you talk to me again." If the Giants had that kind of a conversation with Brian Daboll, would you be surprised? Because that goes on all the time. It goes on all the time in the real world too. When you're up for a job and someone says, "I know you're going to be going out listening to other people, and I got to interview more people, but please, before you take that job, call me, because I might, but I have to talk to other people first because they're on my list." It goes on all the time, and these people acted like it's such a big deal. Maybe Brian Flores didn't blow them away. Maybe he went in there with a chip on his shoulder and didn't blow them away. I mean, I wouldn't blame him for going out with a chip on his shoulder.
Well, I think what he's saying is his whole point, I guess, from what I've read about this and from the complaint, which I didn't read the entire complaint, but I did read a lot of the points in it. You know, he claimed that they already had made their decision and had already hired essentially Brian Daboll, but they were only bringing him in for his interview to, you know, honor the Rooney Rule. And, you know, that very well may be true. And that's where I think, you know, he's got a lot of ground to stand on in that regard, because the Rooney Rule, although I think it was put in place for a good reason, and I think that, you know, it had, you know, they did it for some of the right reasons. I think, you know, it's being used the wrong way. And, you know, I just don't, the fact that they have to do that, in my opinion, is bad all the way around, that they have to force you to interview, you know, a black coach. I mean, you should want, you know, if there's someone, regardless of what creed or what race someone is, if they're a good candidate, you should interview them. So although I think they did that with the best intentions, I think it's kind of backfired on them.
Well, I mean, I'm going to defend the Giants a little bit here. First of all, from what the list I get, they interviewed Patrick Graham, who is their defensive coordinator, who is a minority. Leslie Frazier, defensive coordinator for the Bills, who is a minority. They interviewed him twice, and he comes from the same organization as Shane. Interviewed Brian Daboll from the Bills. Interviewed Brian Flores, who is a minority. Lou Anarumo of the Bengals defensive coordinator they interviewed, and they were going to interview Dan Quinn at this time, and the other one I saw that. So they 50% of the people they interviewed for the head coaching job were minorities. 50%. It wasn't like they just did one, and one of them got 2 interviews, and makes sense he would get 2 interviews because he comes from the Bills with Shane. So that's the guy from the Bills is going to pick from who he's been working with for the last 4 years over other people if he has the chance. That just makes sense. And Brian Daboll makes sense over Leslie Frazier, just because what's the biggest problem on the Giants? What's the biggest mystery they got to figure out? Daniel Jones. And Brian Daboll is supposedly a quarterback whisperer who did wonders, although I don't put Daniel Jones in Josh Allen's sphere of quarterbacking. That's what you're hoping you can get him close to. It makes sense to get Brian Daboll. But I would have accepted Brian Flores if they took him over the other guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a good coach, and I definitely think he would have been hired to be a coach again. And regardless of what happened in Miami, I think he is still was still a strong candidate for many of these jobs. And I think some of the frustration is around, the hiring of these guys that have never been head coaches before. And that's been going on a lot. Mm-hmm. Last year with the Philadelphia Eagles job, with the, I guess they're the Los Angeles Chargers now, that there's a lot of coaches that are being hired that have never been head coaches before. And that trend is continuing. And whether or not, why that is, I'm not 100% sure. But a lot of people are looking to find, the next LaFleur. They're wanting to find, the next Sean McVay. They want to get these young up and coming guys that are, unique and are, going to bring their franchise where they want it to be. And I think that's where a lot of these guys are going.
But yeah, anybody, if you know NFL history, it's a step in the right direction. Because if you go back to the 70s and 80s, when I was growing up, there was this coaching old boy network, guys like Marion Campbell, and I'm trying to think of other names out of that list, that were terrible coaches that kept getting second chances in second cities. Why? Because they were the old boys, and all the GMs knew them, and their old head coaches would always give them a recommendation and say, "Oh, yeah, when he was in Atlanta, Atlanta never wins. Give him a chance here." That's how it used to be. It was worse back then. You talk about black coaches never getting a chance. Black coaches never got a chance. And then on top of it all, you had these terrible coaches who get second, third, fourth chances in different cities, and coming up 2-12, 3-13 or whatever, and still getting another chance at it. So they have moved forward on this, and I think it's, I like I said, Brian Flores, I don't agree with his firing. I think that was stupid, but I think Miami, he made them competitive. How long has it been since Miami's been competitive? Come on, they were competitive 2 years in a row. Yeah, he didn't win 10 games and he lost 7 in a row. But remember one thing: a year ago, he had Ryan Fitzpatrick on the bench ready to come in when Tua blew up. Who do you have this year? You had to work through games when Tua wasn't maybe that good, and he had to wait for Tua to get a handle on it. So maybe that hurt. That's why they lost 7 games in a row. But towards the end of the year, they were competing. They had a chance. I mean, I hate when we get the courts involved, or we become too litigious in this society, and it's just too many things we try and settle in court.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much how we do it. But I mean, I'd love to talk about some of these guys that were hired, because I do think in some of these instances, hiring a guy that's had experience as a head coach is a good thing. Look at Pete Carroll. I mean, he definitely didn't tear it up his first coaching job. He struggled in the NFL in his first spot, but I think he learned from that. And then when he got the Seahawks job, I mean, let's be honest, he's been one of the best coaches in the NFL since that time. Look at Bill Belichick. I actually thought he did a really good job in Cleveland when he was there. I mean, he took him to the precipice of the Super Bowl 2 years in a row and, was let go. And I think he learned from that. So there's been many instances where guys have maybe not had the epitome of success in their first stop, but, they've learned from their failures and, taken that with them in their second stint.
All right, well, let's look at Chicago. You got Matt Eberflus, defensive coordinator for the Colts. Colts had a very good D this year. He's done well down there in Indianapolis. He's coming up to Chicago. We both were very critical of Chicago's last coach for what he did with Justin Fields, but I think he's got a quarterback with a lot of potential. They're got a lot of work to do in the offensive side of the ball, but he walks into a good defense. What do you think about that hire?
Yeah, didn't like it. I got to be honest with you. I thought it was a horrible hire. I'm looking at when I was watching that Week 18 game when Trevor Lawrence was dominating the Colts defense as they're trying to get into the playoffs. I just didn't sit there thinking, wow, this defensive coordinator should get hired as a head coach, based on this game plan. And I know their defense did have some success throughout the year, but, I give a lot of that credit to Frank Reich and his coaching ability. And I'm not 100% sure I'm sold on this guy who's, in my estimation, has never been a head coach
Nope.
In his life. And just to me, he didn't seem like he was the best candidate or even a viable candidate for the Bears. And, where Nagy really seemed to fumble himself was on the offensive side, where he was supposed to be an offensive guru, but he's just, struggled with the development of quarterbacks and with the handling of the quarterback position, and was basically fired because of that. And so now when they really need someone to come in and fix the quarterback position and help this, young Justin Fields, who's shown a lot of talent and an immense amount of ability and flashes to where he could be really good, I just don't know if this is the guy to bring him along. I mean, maybe he'll make the greatest hire ever and really bring along a great offensive coordinator to take over the offensive side of things. But nothing about this guy screams turning the Bears into a contender right away. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he will. But, this guy's never been a head coach in his life. And I'm just not sold on it. What are your thoughts on this guy?
Well, to steal from John Madden, he's got a Chicago name, Everfluss. But I mean, I like you said, you broke it down very well there. I mean, you're right. I'm not going to judge him on that last week against the Jags. Anybody can have a bad week. The defense for the Colts overall did a good job.
But that was there to get into the playoffs. That was like the one game that if you're ever going to come up with a game plan, that should have been the game.
I understand, but I mean, it's still a coach can have a bad week, a coach can have a team can have a bad week. So I'm not gonna. You got to judge the overall picture of him. But I'm just saying that he could have had a bad week and he blew him away on the interview. I don't know. I wasn't in on the interview, but let's look at the pass not taken. Dennis Allen with the Saints was interviewed for the job. Dennis Allen had his chance with the Raiders. Maybe not the best time to be the Raiders coach. He's another guy who did a good job with the defense down and with the Saints, but they're very talented, and you need somebody on the offensive side of the ball. So let's look. Then another one they interviewed was Todd Bowles. Now, I feel sorry for Todd Bowles because I think the Jets shafted him when they drafted Sam Darnold and said, your last year here is babysitting Darnold. Don't worry about winning games. And they screwed him. Jim Caldwell, we both like. Had 2 interviews there. May have been a better choice. What do you think about Jim Caldwell?
Yeah, I would have loved Todd Bowles or Jim Caldwell. Either one of them, I think, would have been a tremendous coach for the Chicago Bears because they've been a coach before and they understand what it takes to win in this league. From the head coaching perspective, this Eberflus, nothing against the guy. I mean, I like him essentially because he's from Toledo. Hell, he went to Toledo. He's from Whitmer High School in Toledo. He's an Ohio guy. So, me, I love all things Ohio. And I'm all for guys getting their best shots. But I think Todd Bowles or the other guy would have been a tremendous – Jim Caldwell would have been a tremendous hire here instead of this dude. I mean, I don't understand it. I mean, whether he interviewed well or not, I just think, you really need to get this right, in my opinion, for the Bears franchise to move forward and to hire some guy that's never been a head coach in his entire life at any level. I don't understand where they're going with this.
And another guy that was in that was Doug Peterson, who wouldn't have been another pretty good choice there. Right there.
Yeah, Todd Bowles, Caldwell, or Peterson, any of those 3, I think, would have been the way to go.
Now you look at the Broncos, who settled on Nathaniel Hackett. Both you and I think that that's a move to try and entice Aaron Rodgers to come there, and I think that's probably the other way that they're looking at. Outside of the list I see here, none of the guys on this list have any head coaching job they're looking at. Bieniemy, Brian Callahan, Jonathan Gannon, Luke Getsy, Aaron Glenn, Nathaniel Hackett, who they hired, Gerard Mayo, Kellen Moore, Kevin O'Connell. I mean, if it wasn't more obvious why they picked their coach, it can't be more obvious than it was.
I mean, I guess. I mean, if they do not end up getting Aaron Rodgers, I think that this could be a big problem for the Broncos. I mean, this guy, 42 years old, once again, never been a head coach in my estimation. I mean, I don't think he's even been a head coach in college.
Right.
And from what I've heard. So, and the other thing is, they talk about Bieniemy not getting, a head coaching job because he's not the play caller. Nathaniel Hackett wasn't the play caller in Green Bay either. Matt LaFleur called the plays.
Yeah.
And the plays that LaFleur didn't call, Aaron Rodgers called them.
Yeah, I was about to say.
And you know what? I could have been the effing offensive coordinator for the Packers. I mean, Aaron Rodgers makes everybody on the offensive side of the ball look really good. So
and let's face facts. There's no call you send in Aaron Rodgers that he's not willing and able to overrule if he wants to.
Yeah. Well, and this guy didn't even send any in. So I'm not sure, why they fell in love with this guy and why this guy got so much credit for the Packers' success when he wasn't even the play caller. I mean, he was never the play caller. LaFleur called the plays the entire time. So I'm confused with this hire as well.
All right, and then we go down to the Texans. Brian Flores had 2 interviews there. Maybe he might not have been a bad choice there, but it's kind of like going what he had with the Dolphins unless he gets Deshaun Watson. Maybe that was the move to try and keep Deshaun Watson in town because it seems that Deshaun Watson likes Flores. Jonathan Gannon, Joe Lombardi, Josh McCown, who's never coached, just been a quarterback, Kevin O'Connell, Hines Ward. No head coaching there in the Texans are they looking at. And I think in a way, I think they know that no experienced guy really wants to go there.
Yeah, I don't know who would want this job. I mean, especially after seeing what they did to David Pulley, who came in and was basically handcuffed behind his back while he was the coach there, wasn't allowed to play their franchise quarterback, wasn't allowed to trade their franchise quarterback. And then in the middle of the year, they started yard sailing any talent that they did have or anybody that had any value whatsoever. They shipped out of town, and he still ended up, keeping the team together and keeping them playing hard and being competitive in most of their ball games. So, yeah, why the hell anyone would want this job, I don't know. I sure wouldn't.
Then we go to Jacksonville, who's still, we hear that, or I hear, or everybody hears, really Byron Leftwich is going to pull his name from this, even though he was supposedly had the upper hand, being that he was a Jacksonville Jaguar at one time. And the fact of the matter is, because of his reputation he's earned down with Tampa, though with him another situation where you got Bruce Arians in his ear and you got Tom Brady making the final call on the field, whatever he threw in there. But at least he called the plays.
He did call the plays.
And
he played quarterback in this league at a high level for a long time and was also
I don't know if I'd say high level. I don't know if I'd say high level for a long time. He had some of his problems. I mean, he played. I give you he played. But I'm not going to say he played at a high level.
He was the starting quarterback for the Jaguars for a long time, bro. And
Dave Garrard
he at least has some experience in the NFL. I mean, he played for the Jaguars, was their starting quarterback pretty much for 4 or 5 years. I mean, was he the greatest quarterback ever? No, but this guy, knows the position, and I think he's at least qualified to be the head coach. But I actually respect this guy a lot more now, saying that he didn't want this job, because even though he played there and he's got some ties to Jacksonville, this roster's garbage. The ownership is horrible. This team, as I've mentioned numerous times, has lost 10 games or more, 10 out of the last 11 years. I wouldn't want anything to do with this place. And I think he's smart for pulling his name out.
I feel so sorry for Trevor Lawrence, because he's going to get us. I don't know who he's going to get. Get our coaches up. Darryl Bevel, who's there as their interim coach.
What I've heard is that it's basically down to Doug Peterson and Rich Cimini, the former interim coach in Oakland, or in Las Vegas, excuse me, and the former Super Bowl winning coach for the Eagles. Those are the two guys that they're targeting at this point. Pretty much after Leftwich turned them down. Either one of those guys, I think they would be home runs for them if they could actually convince them to come there.
Well, I think Peterson would be the one I'd be looking at, because you need somebody to get Trevor Lawrence on the right path. The Raiders go out and get Josh McDaniel. Finally decided to leave Bill Belichick's side. Maybe he decided Belichick's never going to retire, I guess. Gerard Mayo was up for it. Todd Bowles was up for it. The guy I feel sorry for is Biasekia. I mean, to sit there and take over that mess in the Raiders and actually get them to the playoffs. I mean, he deserved a shot at the full-time job. I mean, a real good shot at it. I mean, he obviously controlled their locker room to a point. He knows their team. And like I said, not too many guys would have been, as an interim coach, be able to rally that mess they were in and get them into the playoffs. Overall, give me your feeling on Josh McDaniel finally getting back to the head coaching position. Good place for him, not a good place for him. And how you feel about Biasekia not getting his shot?
Yeah. Did I call him Rich Samini a minute ago?
Yeah, I didn't.
I think I did. Yeah, Rich Bisaccia is who I was talking about for the Jaguars job. Rich Bisaccia and Doug Peterson are the two guys there. I was reading an article from Rich Samini. But, I think this is a good spot for Josh McDaniels. I mean, what's confusing to me is, he pulled his name out of the Colts job a couple of years ago, and I think he's kind of regretted that decision ever since. And I rightfully so. I mean, I didn't understand it. It seemed like it would have been a good fit for him. And so, I understand why he took this job. I mean, I don't think it would have been smart for him to stay in New England and then wait to take over for Bill Belichick and then be, for them to want him to win 6 Super Bowls in a row. I mean, it'd be tough. It's always tough to replace a legend. So I think it's good for him to get out of New England and to go to Las Vegas, which honestly, of all these teams, probably has one of the best rosters.
And I think it's a good place for Carr. I think that could really help him, having Josh McDaniel there to help him. I mean, he's shown a lot of leadership and everything in that town. Maybe to finally get somebody he can work with, and seems to be a guy that can help quarterbacks get better. I think that's a good place for him.
Yeah, I do too. I think, if anybody can right the ship offensively out in Las Vegas, I think Josh McDaniels may be the good guy for this. I mean, he definitely has had his hands full the last couple of years with Cam Newton experiment 2 years ago, and then with a rookie quarterback this past year. And I think he's learned a lot. And I think he is a guy that could potentially do a good job out there. It just, it all depends on, how their GM operates. As they did fire Mike Mayock and moved on from him. So they're going to need to get some additional talent in there, and they're going to need to make a lot of difficult decisions on their roster because, this year they lost almost every first-round draft pick that they picked in the last 3 years. I mean, Diggs is gone. He's never coming back. Damon Arnett, their cornerback, they selected out of Ohio State with the 18th overall pick 2 years ago. He was released and is never coming back. So they've got some holes, and they definitely, have some talent that they need to bring in.
And then we'll go out to down to Miami. Well, Brian Daboll was hired by the Giants. It's in this list. Thomas Brown, the Rams' assistant head coach, whatever that means. Leslie Frazier from the Bills, defensive coordinator. Vance Joseph, defensive coordinator of the Cardinals. Mike McDaniel, offensive coordinator of the Niners, whatever that means, because we know Shanahan calls all the plays there. Kellen Moore of the Cowboys, and Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn said he's remaining in D.C.
And Dallas.
With Dallas, I'm sorry. And now you got the cloud of this whole lawsuit hanging over this whole process too. So what do you? First of all, none of those candidates jumped out at me. I mean, none of them sat there and said, "Yeah, you grab him." And
yeah, I mean, none of those guys seem like an upgrade over Brian Flores. Definitely not. And I think this lawsuit, being filed at the time that it's just bringing a lot of negativity around the Dolphins organization. And, this is a team that's kind of on that teetering point of either moving forward, can they get over the hump? Can they become a playoff team? Can they win 12, 13 games? Or are they going to regress and go, backwards and win 8, 7, 6 games? I mean, this is a very critical point. And, do we trust the ownership to make the right hire here?
No,
I mean, I don't. And I think the Dolphins are in serious trouble. I mean, the handling of this situation this whole year, I think whether it was Flores, whether it was ownership, I don't know. But, the constant talk about bringing Deshaun Watson in while you're trying to develop a young quarterback, it's just a horrible idea because you're wrecking his confidence from week to week.
Yeah, well, everything they've done in the last 18 years since Stephen Ross has been in Miami. I mean, outside of one or two flashes, or lucky flashes, maybe you can say, have been wrong. So here's one of the most attractive jobs out there, and it's supposed to go to Kevin O'Connell, the Rams offensive coordinator. Another doesn't call the plays, but the Minnesota Vikings, with the things they have up there, the places, the players in place. There's a place where you can hit the ground running and be competitive right away, especially if Aaron Rodgers was to do the leap of faith and go to Denver.
Yeah, I mean, but what are they doing with their quarterback position? I mean, there's so much talk right now about potentially moving Kirk Cousins and getting rid of him and moving on from him. Well, you don't have anyone else on the roster, really. Right. So you're going to need to keep him around. And, I don't understand the bringing Jim Harbaugh in and making a big deal about it and then supposedly not even offering him the job. I mean, that to me was confusing. And Kevin O'Connell, once again, this guy doesn't call the plays, has never been a head coach, and apparently that's who they're going with. But I'm not sure about that hire either. I do like the Vikings roster. I think this is a team that if they got the right guy there, could potentially, be in line to be a competitive ball club. But I don't know if this guy's your guy. I mean, Staley showed flashes, out in LA for the Chargers, and we had some questions about him, but they didn't make the playoffs, so I'm not sure it was exactly a home run hire. Maybe he'll figure it out in year 2, but this guy, yeah, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, who calls the plays for the Rams? I mean, the head coach does.
And another guy who was up for it was Todd Bowles, who might have been a really good choice right there. Todd Bowles could have a defensive guy, help their defensive defensive woes, and he's give him a shot at it again after he got screwed by the Jets, like I said, when they gave him nothing. And then you got the New Orleans Saints, who this is late to the party because no one expected that Sean Payton was going to retire like he did. Dennis Allen's in the running for that. Brian Flores was in the running for that, and they talked to him already. Aaron Glenn, the Lions defensive coordinator, Byron Leftwich, now that he's said he's not going to go to Jacksonville. I mean, the one thing you got with Byron is if you're going to keep Jameis Winston there, Byron Leftwich and him have worked together before. So that might be an attractive place for him to go.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think the Saints is another place that could be an attractive spot for some of these coaches. However, they're in a little bit of a pinch financially. I mean, they're up against it cap wise. They've been up against it the last couple of years. And they've got a lot of decisions to make on their roster. Do they bring Michael Thomas back and try and get him back on the field? Is he even going to be the same player? I mean, the guy hasn't played in almost 2 years, and he's still under contract. What did they do at the quarterback position? I don't know. But they do have some talent. They've got some young players, Marcus Callaway, Alvin Kamara. They've got a really good defense. This would be a place that would be attractive to me if I were a head coaching candidate.
Yeah, plus they're a team that's used to winning.
And with Tom Brady retiring, they're essentially going to be a team that could be back on top in the NFC South. I mean, the Falcons are still rebuilding. The Panthers are just a mess. Why they kept their coach, I don't know. They paid this guy tons of money. He's done nothing but make mistakes personnel-wise and on the field. So the Panthers don't scare me. And without Brady, the Buccaneers are back to being the Buccaneers.
Yeah, true. The Yuccaneers. And Bruce Arians might be upset that he decided to stay. I mean, but then again, and we can talk about it a little bit more next week. But now Jimmy Garoppolo, all of a sudden, after losing his playoff game this past weekend, is becoming attractive to a lot of places. Guys that are like Tom Brady is now. He's attractive to Tampa Bay, supposedly. Washington's looking at him. A lot of teams are looking at Jimmy Garoppolo and his stocks going up, even though everybody called him Jimmy Gag for a while this year, even though I thought it was unfair. And the last thing I want you to break down is the Giants. Brian Daboll, I gave you my opinion. It makes sense on the surface, but as a Giant fan, I don't have a lot of faith in the Maras or this generation of Maras to make the right pick. But the one thing that worries me is Shane came in here and he said they're going to have to trim a lot of dead payroll, which means Daboll's going to have – they don't have a lot of talent to begin with. How much thinner can you get?
Yeah, this team worries me just with the situation that they're in. And this, once again, this is a guy who's never been a head coach in his life. I mean, he's been in coaching, started as a volunteer assistant coach at William & Mary in 1997, and then became a GA at Michigan State. And then he went on to be a defensive assistant coach for the Patriots, and then, moved into the offensive ranks. But he's never been a head coach ever. So, this is one of those situations again where, how's he going to fare being the guy in charge? I mean, I have no idea. And some guys, thrive at it and have a really good plan and take care of business. And other guys struggle with being the dude that makes all the final decisions. So, I think he did a good job with Josh Allen, obviously, in the development of him. But they don't have Josh Allen in New York.
Right.
They don't have a guy that has Josh Allen's talent, unfortunately. And can he make Daniel Jones better? Yeah. But is Daniel Jones even healthy? I don't know. I mean, if his neck is as screwed up as it sounds, he may not even be available at the beginning of the season. So they've got a lot of personnel decisions, and hopefully they made the right decision at GM because that's the first thing they need to get. They need to get their roster solidified, and then hopefully this guy will be the right head coach. But I like him. I think I don't think it was a bad hire, but at this point I'm not 100% sold that he's going to be able to fix all the problems that exist in New York.
Yeah, and you brought up the biggest thing there, and we talked about it a year ago, maybe 2 years ago about this. If not Daniel Jones, who? Since Eli Manning retired, they have not had a viable backup that could push Daniel Jones, compete with Daniel Jones, or as we've seen with his propensity for getting hurt, replace him. And that's one of the biggest things that the Giants are going to have to address when they talk about trimming the fat off this salary that they have. Is you have to find some way to fit some kind of a Teddy Bridgewater Find Teddy Bridgewater and bring him if he gets cut. Somebody who if like you said, if it's worse than they're making out for Daniel Jones and he can't play anymore, he's there. If he's just there to compete with him and push him, so when he blows up, he's there. Or if he inevitably gets injured next year, he's there. You can't go into next season with Daniel Jones and Mike Glennon or Jake Fromm.
That's very true. The problem is the Giants have no cap space. And so this is a team that needs to fix a lot of problems, and they don't have any money to do it. So,
Right.
yeah, they're going to have to get rid of some guys. But this is why, they had to bring in a new GM, because Dave Gettleman's a moron and has left them in a bad situation. They don't have much talent, and some of the talent that they do have, they're going to have to get rid of because they don't have any money. So that's where I'm worried about this team. They have no money, and they've got a lot of holes.
Yeah, and I don't really remember Buffalo when McDermott came in, how bad Rex Ryan left him as far as I know. He didn't have a quarterback. Didn't have a hell of a lot of talent, because Rex Ryan never worried about the offensive side of the ball. He just thought his defense could carry everything. But they said at the time when McDermott and those guys moved there up in Buffalo, they were heavy on a cap hit and had to get rid of $55 million of payroll to turn it around. But are the New York fans aren't used to waiting 6 years to have it happen.
Yeah, I mean, are they even, if they do have, that's the other thing, is if they do have the right guys in place, let's say they hired the right GM and they hired the right coach, will the Giants be patient enough to wait to let them do their magic? I mean, that's the other question.
It's hard. It's hard in this town. The worst thing about the New York area and growing up here is we are so arrogant and so overrated in our minds that it's crazy. We think, if you grew up in the New York area, you think that we've been winning championships right and left. But if you take the Yankees championships away from the New York area, the teams that are left here didn't win a hell of a lot. But we have this arrogance where we think that if the New York area deserves championship teams. We haven't had a lot of championship teams.
Yeah, and I don't know if you heard this, but today the Giants have hired Mike Kafka as their offensive coordinator, and
another guy who doesn't call the plays.
Another guy who has been the quarterback's coach for the Kansas City Chiefs. Which, buddy, I could be the quarterback's coach for the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes is a good guy to be in charge of. Let's just say so. He gets a promotion. This is a guy who had a pretty impressive career at Northwestern. Played for the Eagles, drafted in the 4th round for them. Basically, I think he played in like 4 games, and has been, bounced around the league a little bit. So, is he's not going to call the plays.
Let me ask you a question.
That Dayball would, right?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question, okay? And maybe I'm wrong to go down this path, but I'm going to ask you this question. When you look around the league, okay, and I want you to envision Daniel Jones on his best day. The things, and I know you're considered there's not many of those best days, but with the talent you see in Daniel Jones, what quarterback, successful quarterback, does he remind you of around the league? Anybody, if anybody.
Somebody that's playing right now?
Yeah.
Who does Daniel Jones remind me of that's playing right now? That's kind of a tough one. I mean,
I know I'm springing this on you. It's a tough one because you're trying to go through that Rolodex in your mind.
I am. I mean, he doesn't really remind me of anybody, to be honest. He's kind of tall. He's kind of a thinner type guy. Out of a smaller school. Duke played in the ACC, but definitely not a blue chip powerhouse program. I don't know. I guess if anyone that I would kind of compare him to, I guess would be Cousins,
okay.
Just based on the way they play.
Okay.
That's probably the closest I could come to.
That's not bad. But I mean, you've got Mike Kafka, who has been coaching the quarterback coach of Patrick Mahomes. And we can joke about up and down how much it means somewhere. But Patrick Mahomes is totally different than Daniel Jones. I would rather have them, and maybe Kafka and Daboll are good friends. Maybe they share the same philosophy, and maybe that's why they did this. But to me, if you want to get the best out of Daniel Jones, find a coach who has coached a quarterback like him and been successful at it to turn him into the best quarterback he can be. Get what I'm going on with that?
Yeah. No, I understand. I understand what you're saying. I don't know, man. I'm confused by a lot of these hires. I'm confused by a lot of the moves that have been made, and I understand, why some of these guys are, why Flores and some of these other guys like Eric Bieniemy are frustrated. I mean, there's just a lot of kind of hires that leave me scratching my head. So if I was a guy that actually had experience in this league, I would be confused also.
Well, yeah, and as we get ready to end tonight's show, I mean, I think it's been a good show about this coaching, and it's a worthy topic. I just, like I said, I hate that Brian Flores felt the need to do this, because I think he's a good coach and he deserves another shot, and I think he didn't deserve to get fired. Eric Bieniemy, I have nothing against Eric Bieniemy, and if he got a shot, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I just think he's being held back by being Andy Reid's consigliere. That's what he's looked at to be. He's
yeah, but look at all these other guys that don't call the plays.
That is what I was about to go to.
That's
and
what
your argument right there says, why isn't Eric Bieniemy getting it?
Yeah, Kevin O'Connell, who doesn't call the plays in LA, and he's probably going to get the Vikings job. And then you've got Nathaniel Hackett, who hasn't called one play since he's been in Green Bay, and he gets the Broncos job. So, why not take a shot at Bieniemy, who's gone to Super Bowls and won one with the Chiefs?
Exactly. That was that's where I was coming around to. It's just like Eric Bieniemy is the guy who really has the lawsuit. At least Brian Flores had the keys to the kingdom for 3 years. Eric Bieniemy is still waiting to get out of the garage.
Yeah, I mean, if Eric Bieniemy brought this lawsuit about, I would it would make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
But like I said, this is a guy who who's been a head coach, and he's the one doing it. So that's also. I guess I'm just confused all the way around right now.
Yeah, and I think it's also disturbing because, like I said, we've had such a good playoffs. We'll talk about the games next week as we get ready for the Super Bowl and break down the Super Bowl, which will be our big show next week about talking about the Super Bowl and what hopefully will be a good game. I'll tell you, you sit there and there's the storylines abound, but I think the basic two storylines are going to be who deserve the new young gun who has raised the Bengals out of the ashes in only 2 years, and the guy who suffered for so long in Detroit finally getting his shot at the brass ring. Those two are going to be the central focus, and two good stories, and hard to root against either one of them.
Yeah, but here we are. We've sat here for an hour and we haven't even talked about him. I mean, we got Matt Stafford, who, a lot of people blamed for some of the problems in Detroit. Not me. I mean, I talked about how great he was and how amazing of a player he was, even though he had nothing around him for 13 years in Detroit. And he finally gets on a team that's got some personnel around him, and he's taking them all the way to the Super Bowl. So, that is where the focus should be right now. And it's unfortunate that that's not even what anyone's talking about. No one's talking about Joe Burrow and him basically in his first full season as an NFL quarterback, leading a team that honestly was 4-12 last year and taking them to the Super Bowl. That's what we should be focusing on, is the great job that these two guys have done and the great job that the entire team of the Cincinnati Bengals has done to make it to the Super Bowl here, and how great the games have been the last few weeks. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the other thing we're not even talking about is that was we didn't think that the conference championship weekend was going to be, very appetizing considering what an amazing divisional round we had. But honestly, the games were very good.
Yeah, they were very good. In both games, they had to come from behind to win. Both showed a lot of character. Both showed a lot of good play, on both sides. A little shocking, that Patrick Mahomes had such a bad second half. I mean, in the first half, he was on fire. I mean, you can't play the quarterback position much better than he played it in the first half. But it was shocking to see him have that bad a second half. And it was, they said they changed up the defense. The Bengals defensive coordinator, I forget who the broadcaster said. I think it might have been Bill Cowher who sat there and he said they played a totally different defense in the second half, and Kansas City just didn't adjust to it.
Yeah, it's definitely true. I mean, they changed what they were doing, and they were disguising their looks. They were, running press man. They were running two shell. I mean, they were doing a lot of different things, and they were bringing some pressure just with their front four. I mean, they weren't doing a ton of blitzing and sending linebackers. They were getting after them with Hendrickson and with Sam Hubbard and causing, Patrick Mahomes some problems. It was kind of a delay type of rush, and that's honestly probably one of the best schemes I've seen to go against the Chiefs, and they struggled to do anything in the second half of that game.
Yeah, I tell you, when I first saw it come out, I was like, oh God, this is going to be embarrassing. Kansas City's just going to run them off the field the way they looked. It's kind of like a reversal of what the Chiefs did to the Texans a couple of years ago, where it looked like that was going to be that way. So,
yeah.
Anyways, what do you got going on this weekend?
I am going to be watching the Senior Bowl here this weekend. I've been spending a lot of time kind of breaking down these prospects. I'm so confused as to this upcoming draft as to where the talent lies in it. The quarterbacks are confusing to me. Where the talent is, at the biggest in this draft is probably at the offensive tackle position. There's more solid tackles than I've seen in years. And honestly, if I needed an offensive tackle, I would be licking my chops. The other positions, I don't know. There's some guys that I need to continue to work on, but that's really what's going to be my focus this weekend. I'm going to watch a lot of the film from the practices, and I'm going to watch some of the game film from the Senior Bowl and really dig into these guys and figure out, who should be drafted and where.
Who do you got on man coverage this Sunday?
We are still talking about the guest at this point. We're going to do a lot of the breakdown, like I said, of the Senior Bowl, and do a draft preview and potentially have some people join us.
All right. Well, before I just self-promotion for me, for anybody in the Norwalk, Connecticut area. On Wednesday nights, I host a trivia competition at the Bank House down in town. Good food, kind of a southern barbecue place. We do a little trivia between 7 and 9. Come on in. We give away prizes. There's drink specials all night long at the bar if you want to sit there and just be part of the action. We have a lot of fun playing trivia on Wednesday nights, 7 to 9. At the Bank House at River Street in Norwalk, Connecticut.
Sounds like a good time. Yeah, no, once again, the Rams beat the Niners 20-17, and the Bengals beat the Chiefs 27-24. So we had 6 points separating both teams that lost.
And who in when you look back, who was talking about a kicker that the Bengals took in last year's draft at this time? Yeah. I mean, that's for a team. When you think about it, when you think about the Bengals, okay, they had Joe Burrow. They drafted him already. They went out and got Jamar Chase early. But nobody, and the kicker is often an afterthought. No one usually, spends a lot of time on drafting kickers, and they got a good one.
They should be commended for their recent draft work. I really, the Bengals until now haven't really gotten a lot of credit. But T. Higgins was a hit. Joe Burrow, obviously a home run. Joe Mixon was an excellent draft pick. Sam Hubbard has turned out to be a fine player. The move to bring in Hendrickson from the Saints, and a lot of people questioned the amount of money they gave him. Well, he's earned every freaking cent of it. And a lot of people questioned the move of getting rid of Dunlop last year, and man, they haven't missed him at all. So I think the Bengals front office and their scouting department deserves some credit on the way that these guys have played. I mean, hell, no one wanted Eli Apple on their roster last year. He's bounced around to a number of different teams, and he might be one of the most improved players in the NFL.
He had a good game on Sunday. I'll tell you that much. It was better than he ever played with the Giants. So, he has improved. I can't put the man down. So, anyways, we're going to say goodnight right now. Tune in for man coverage on Sunday. Wednesday, like I said, come on down and see me at the Bank House if you're in the Fairfield County area. And we'll be back next Thursday night with a big Super Bowl show. Everybody have a great night. Talk to you later.
Adios.